Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. And today we are beginning to study the last part of the book 8, which is also the last part of the Buddha and his Dhamma. And this is the last part, but many important teachings of the Buddha are elucidated here by Babasaheb Ambedkar. And that's why the last sections of the Buddhism are very important to study. So this particular part 3 of the book 8, which happens to be the last book, and this happens to be the last part of the last book, is very interesting from many perspectives. And as we are going to see, that there is so much we can learn from this part 3 of the book 8 of the Buddhism. So its heading is his likes and dislikes. It's very strange to conceive an idea as to what the Buddha liked and what the Buddha disliked, because we have been taught that the Buddha was, had this what is called the upekkha, or a mind that was neutral. So how can Buddha entertain like and dislike? We can easily, get puzzled by this. One of the ways by which we can look at is, the way Buddha has decided, has divided the vision into right vision and the wrong vision, and anything that fits into right vision is what the Buddha liked and what the Buddha taught. And it's like the discussion about the Dhamma and Adhamma that we have seen in the previous classes. And in a way, it's also about seeing, about sati. And the highest form of sati, as we know, is the upekkha. And the word upekkha has contained a very important, root of the word called ikkha, or ikkha means to see, and ikkati means to see or to explore neutrally. And the way of examination into the experiences, into the world, as to what leads to the happiness of the world and what leads to the suffering of the world and in the world, are very categorically mentioned teachings of the Buddha, as we see in the 7 Bojjhangas in terms of the Dhamma Vicaya. We pick up what leads to progress and what retards us back into the instinctual world, or in the sensory world, as we know and we have seen in the previous classes. So his likes and dislikes, this title should not have any problem to accept, because this is a wonderful way of putting what leads to the happiness and what leads to the downfall or suffering. And this part 3 is divided into subparts, and there are 4 in number. The first subpart is his dislike of poverty. And this is a very important teaching of the Buddha, that there is no merit in poverty, there is no merit in suffering. And we have seen in the previous classes and in the writings and speeches of Babasaheb Ambedkar that he makes it an emphatic point that the Buddha didn't ennoble the poverty. And we have seen that strand running in the Buddhist history about celebrating the poverty. So but in the if you look at the Buddhist history, archaeological evidences, we see that the Buddhists were not averse to earnings or creating wealth or creating resources, which were very important to provide invaluable services to the humanity. So we are going to look at the subpart 1 in terms of his dislike of poverty. And subsection 2, which we are going to cover today as well, is his dislike of the acquisitive instinct, means to possessiveness, avarice, greed. It's an instinct which drives us to acquire, to possess, to accumulate. And this is also very interesting subpart, and it goes very deeply, as we will be looking into. And the subpart 3 is about his joy at the beautiful, and the subpart 4 is love for the lovely. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at the subpart 1 and the subpart 2, and in the next class we will study the remaining third and the fourth subparts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through it so that you get an idea of the content of the material that Baba Ambedkar has included, and then I'm going to gloss over some of the finer points of this very interesting and important teachings that the Buddha laid before us. So his dislike of poverty, it begins with the verse number 1. Once the exalted one was dwelling near Shravasti in Jeta's grove at Anathapindika's park, Arame, and there Anathapindika, the householder, came and visited him, and after saluting, sat down at one side. So seated, he asked the exalted one to explain why one should acquire riches. So we know that Anathapindika was a very rich man, and he was so rich that he offered this Jeta's garden to the Buddha. And we have seen this story episode in the Buddhist history as to how Anathapindika exemplified the very sense of what is called the Dana Paramita. And he was somebody who gave up all his material sort of possessions. Interestingly, he never became the bhikkhu, and the Buddha also didn't encourage him to become a bhikkhu. But we know in the history that he has attained the fruits of freedom, and proving the point that even if you practice at home, you have access to the ultimate freedom of mind that comes up with practicing the Buddha's teachings. And Anathapindika was also, of course, rich. He was making a lot of money, and he's asking the Buddha why one should acquire riches. So the Buddha says, since you ask me, I will explain. So verse number 3 goes like this. Take the case of Aryan disciple with riches gotten by work and zeal, gathered by the strength of the arm, earned by the sweat of the brow, justly obtained in a lawful way. He makes himself happy, glad, and keeps that great happiness. He makes his parents happy, glad, and keeps them so. So likewise his wife and children, his slaves, workfolk, and men. This is the first reason for getting riches. So this is the first reason for getting the riches, because without having the resources or without having the means, we cannot support the family or parents or those who are working for us and the rest of the humanity. We cannot support if we do not have the means to support the humanity at large, including starting with the family. And the Buddha says that the riches has to be gotten by work and zeal. He's not asking us to steal money. He's not asking us to earn the wealth by the insidious or evil ways. He's asking us to earn the money by working hard, zealously, and gathered by the strength of the arm, and earned by the sweat of the brow, justly obtained in a lawful way. This is very important, that the wealth has to be acquired justly in a lawful way, and that's the wealth that one tries to acquire. So this is the first sort of the reason for getting riches, for getting money, for earning money. So earning money is not discounted here. And the Buddha is not against making money in a lawful way. In fact, earning money or earning the livelihood forms one of the very important teachings of the Buddha. And it's enshrined in four noble, eightfold path. Yes, ajivika, right? Livelihood. So ajivika, it has a jiv in between. It's some we have to do something, earn money. What for? To sustain the life, isn't it? For the survival of oneself and the survival of the world around us, isn't it? So earning is very important, and that's why it is included in the eightfold path. And the Buddha also compares himself, his charika as a right livelihood, because his life benefits a lot of life. His life benefits a lot of human beings. His life benefits a lot of even animals, because that's what we have seen in the history. The Buddha stopped the yajna and yagas. The Buddha encouraged the harmonious society, and that way the Buddha has been able to sustain the humanity even today, with his teachings. So, we can see at this Samyak Ajivika in a very different way in terms of of providing comfort to the people, health, wealth, and happiness to the people, prosperity to the people, peace to the world, and so on and so forth. So, the verse number 4 goes like this: when the riches are thus gotten, he makes his friends and companions happy, glad, and keeps them so. This is the second reason. So, if we do not have wealth, how can we make our friends and companions happy, glad, and keeps them so? Again, when riches are thus gotten, ill luck from fire and water, rajas and robbers, enemies and heirs is warded off, and he keeps his goods in safety. This is the third reason. So when we acquire wealth, we are safeguarded by ill luck from fire or water. We are always at the mercy of the natural forces like floods, earthquakes, and fire, and winds, hurricanes, and whatnot. And sometimes the rains is too much. And if we have some wealth, we can find a way by which we can safeguard ourselves, even from rajas who loot sometimes in terms of the taxes, even robbers we can save ourselves from, and we can find a way to keep our wealth in safety. So that is the third reason for getting rich. Then when the riches are thus gotten, he makes the 5 oblations. That is to say, oblations to kin. So he has his obligations to the relatives, including the immediate family and the blood relatives, guests who comes to a home, and we can look after them, pitras and rajas and devas. This is the fourth reason. So these are all different human communities that the Buddha has mentioned in the Pali texts. Moreover, when the riches are thus gotten, the householder institutes offerings of lofty aim, celestial, ripening to happiness, leading heavenwards. For all those recluses and godly men who abstain from pride and indolence, who bear all things in patience and humility, each mastering self, each calming self, each perfecting self. This is the fifth reason for getting rich. So what happens when we have the richness, we have the wealth? Then we can institute offerings. We can donate to the wholesome institutions and the wholesome people, and which has the institution should have the lofty aims, and then it leads to what is called the celestial ripening to happiness. If we support something positive, we benefit by supporting that, and then it leads up to heavenwards. So why do we wait for the heaven after our death, until we realize the heaven on this earth itself? If we cannot realize something here and now, how can we expect something to experience afterwards? So the Buddha is in a way saying that those people, those rich people, who share their wealth with others, are leading themselves to heavenward. And for all those recluses and godly men who abstain from pride and indolence, who bear all things in patience and humility, each mastering self, each calming self, each perfecting self. Let's say beautiful words, each mastering self. So, it's very important to master the self. It is very important to calm the self and each perfecting self. Isn't it? Those who are devoted to the life of cultivation of mind, these three things are very important: to master the self, calming the self, isn't it? Because our self is always moved by praises and the criticism, by the gain and the loss, by so many things. Our minds are swayed. Our sense of self is challenged all the time, isn't it? Sometimes our ego is boosted. Sometimes our ego is punctured. And the Buddha says that we have to guard against that. What we have to do is we have to master ourselves, isn't it? Ourself, our reaction to the world, our reaction to different emotions emerging within us. This has to be mastered, and our self should be calm and quiet, and we should be able to perfect self. This is what is for the recluses and godly men, but is also true for all. So if we make donations or share our wealth with such things, it is the reason that we should get rich, isn't it? So Anathapindaka well understood that the blessed Lord did not comfort the poor by praising their poverty, nor did he sublimate poverty as a happy state for man to live in. So these are very, very interesting points that has been made in the verse number 8. Is this that the Buddha is asking us, and Baba Ambedkar is communicating us through this discussion between Buddha and Anathapindaka, is this that the Buddha did not comfort the poor. The Buddha didn't say that, if you are poor, stay poor. In other words, he did not ennoble the poverty. He didn't say that the poverty is good. In fact, in some of the Pali texts, the Buddha has said that the poverty is suffering, isn't it? So, for the need of certain wants, certain basic needs, we suffer. And that's why Baba Ambedkar, one of the greatest philosophers of our times, he said that, the duty of the government is to ensure that the citizens are free from the want and free of hunger. Some of us born in the middle class family have never felt that pangs of hunger or pangs of having no medicines when one is sick. And we have seen this in terms of the epidemic that has just happened before 2 years. And what we have seen there is the poor people suffer a lot in the sense of not having access to the food, not having access to the medical care, not having access to even the basic needs of shelter and clothes and so on and so forth. So Buddha is very categorical in a sense here that he doesn't comfort the poor. And he by praising the poverty, by saying that the poverty is a virtue. And the most important, it's very, very interesting, the last statement. Nor did he sublimate poverty as a happy state for man to live in. Sometimes we have a habit of sublimation. We sublimate, saying that we poverty is better, poverty is good, and but the self-imposed poverty in terms of the bhikshus or those who wants to go forth, those who wants to explore a different dimension of life, for them having nothing, because the whole world is theirs, and they can sustain themselves through bhiksha or whatever. But in general, if we look at it, the Buddha never sublimated the poverty as a happy state for man to live in. And this is a very important point that the Buddhists in India must look into, as to how they can acquire more wealth in a just way, in a proper way, in a way that will add to the resources of the Buddhists, and so that they can share that with others and benefit them with the material help. And this is one of the 4 points that Baba Ambedkar liked Buddhism. Besides, it's scientific, it doesn't accept anything on its face value. It believes in democracy in terms of the liberty, equality, and fraternity, and it doesn't ennoble the poverty, in a sense of sublimation of poverty, celebrating the poverty. It doesn't celebrate the poverty, and this links up with the second subpart which we are going to study. But before we go on to study the subpart 2, there is this connecting dot in terms of Baba Sahib's discussion with Sonlal Shastri, and Sonlal Shastri was reciting a verse of Kabir in terms of Chaha gayi chinta miti manwa beparwah, jinko kuch nahi chahiye wo hai shahenshah. It means, the chaha, the acquisitive instinct, has dissipated. Chaha gayi chinta miti, and therefore all the worries are gone. And those who doesn't want anything, they are the emperors in the world. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar liked it so much that he asked Sonlal Shastri ji to write it down for him on a piece of paper. So, this might look contradictory, that those who don't run after anything are the kings of the world or the emperors of the world. So this particular tension is resolved in this particular subpart 2 when it is titled as his dislike of the acquisitive instinct. You see, we all are driven by the instincts, and within us we are an instinctual species. All living beings have instincts. We have so many instincts, instinct even for language. instinct for procreation, instinct for, many things. And our lives are driven by instincts all the time, and some of them, the instincts are survival in nature, as the biologists have proved, states that some of the instincts are survival in nature, and we have to have those instincts. But particular thing is that when the instincts becomes acquisitive, almost, they become neurotic, almost they become possessive, and that's what the Buddha has talked about, craving, isn't it? Tanha, Trishna. And this word Trishna is a very interesting word. It has to do also with the instinct, because Tanha means, when we are thirsty, that visceral quality of when we are thirsty, when we are hungry, isn't it? And by instinct, we when we are hungry, we tend to do something. When we are, so that visceral nature is captured by the word Tanna. And Baba Ambedkar has put it very nicely in terms of, qualifying this instinctual nature. And some of the instinct, as we have seen, are survival in nature, like food, and so many we can categorize. But here, the instinct to acquire mindlessly, to acquire blindly, to acquire, without necessity, Krishna. And this particular subpart 2 is very important, because this has been taken, this is actually the teaching of the Paticca Samutpada, the dependent origination or conditioned coexistence, or, arising of something based on the causes and conditions, Hetu Paccaya. And the Buddha has explained various Hetu and Paccaya, and that forms the core teaching of the Buddha. Got written on so many Buddhist caves, on tablets, and whatnot. Ye Dhamma Hetu Pabhava Tesang Hetu Tathagato Avatesang Chanirodha Evam Vadi Tathagato. And the very famous formula that we have seen in the context of the Four Noble Truths, that the dukkha and the cause of the dukkha, nirvana and the cause of the nirvana. Very simple manner. And the Paticca Samutpada, as we have seen, is the heart of the Buddha's teachings. And this is what the understanding of it helps us to be in the world, to act in the world. And there are many different formulations of Paticca Samutpada. Many ways the Buddha has taught the Paticca Samutpada. In terms of the general Paticca Samutpada, if this is, that is, if this is not, that is not. With the arising of this, that arises. With the cessation of this, that ceases. This is a very general formulation of the Paticca Samutpada. There is a specific formulation as to how this suffering arises, and we have seen Avijja Paccaya Sankhara, Sankhara Paccaya, the 12 Nidanas, Sankhara Paccaya, Vinyan, and Vinyan Paccaya Namarupa Paccaya Sadayatan, and so on and so forth. We can go on repeating this whole cycle of the 12 Nidanas, which are connected, and they impinge on each other. And the root of the suffering is avijja, not knowing or not able to see as it is. And what we are not able to see as it is the very fact of the causes and conditions which we are not able to see as it is. And therefore we suffer. And when we are able to see as it is, the conditionality, we are free to act. We are free to be in the world. And as I said, that there are many different formulations of Paticca Samutpada, many technical ones. But here in this particular subpart, Dr. Baba Ambedkar has taken a very particular formulation, which we can find in a Pali text called the Madhupindaka Sutta. And the Madhupindaka Sutta is a very beautiful sutta in terms of how the conflict comes into being, and how each of us can resolve those conflicts. And so Madhupindaka is, of course, a sweet ball, like a gulab jamun, a big sweet ball, honey ball, and which anybody can taste. It's sweet. So the Buddha is saying that how we can create the sweetness in the world, and he is giving a very different formulation. Not exactly different, but with a different implication of causes and conditions. And this is very beautifully taught by the Buddha in what is called the Madhupindaka Sutta. So here Baba Ambedkar has brought into play the Madhupindaka Sutta when he's teaching us about the Buddha's dislike of the acquisitive instincts. Okay. So I'm going to read through and I'm going to, then comment upon some of the very important points that we are going to see here. So the Exalted One was once staying in the town of Kammas Dhamma in the country of Kurus, very famous town, they say present Delhi or Kurukshetra. And most probably people say that it's Delhi, the present Delhi. So, even the Satipatthana was taught in this particular place and in the market town. You see, the Great Sutra on the mindfulness was taught in the marketplace, market town. So the Venerable Ananda came to where the Exalted One was, bowed in salutation before him, and took a seat on one side. So this is the dialogue between Ananda and the Buddha. And so seated, he said, marvelous is this law of causation, paticca which has been taught by the Blessed One. It's so deep. To me, it seems as clear can be. A very, very interesting way, Ananda, in the presence of the Buddha, we see this very different energy of Ananda. A very lovable, person in the history of Buddhism. And you see, this is a very beautiful scene. He comes to the Buddha and, he salutes the Buddha and he takes a seat in one side and he exclaims, he's saying that, marvelous is this paticca which has been taught by the Blessed One. Says it's marvelous. The paticca is marvelous. It's taught by the Blessed One. And he says it's so deep, gambhir. The word is gambhir, very deep. It's very deep. To me, it seems as clear can be. And most of us are like Ananda. We tend to feel that we see the paticca as clear can be. And the Buddha is admonishing Ananda. He says, say not so, Ananda. Say not so. Don't say that like that. Deep is this doctrine of events arising from causes. Very, very interesting. Would choose choice of the word. It's very deep. Is this teaching of events arising from causes. So whatever events arise in the world, the law is not easy to understand. It's very deep. It is through not understanding this doctrine, through not penetrating it, that this generation has become a tangled skein, a matted ball of thread, unable to overpass the way of woo. You see, what's very interesting about the Buddha is the use of language. Even in English translation, it looks so appealing. If you read the original Pali, it's more appealing as well. If that comes to the actual words that the Buddha, near to actual words that the Buddha might have spoken. And you see, this to reread, say not so, Ananda, say not so, don't say like that. Deep is this doctrine of events arising from causes. It is through not understanding this doctrine, through not penetrating it, that this generation has become a tangled skein, entangled jata. In Vishuddhimagga, there is a very special gatha with which the Vishuddhimagga begins. Anto jata bahi jata, jataya jatita paja, tang tang gautam puchami, ko imam vijata jata. There is an inner entanglement, there is an external entanglement, and the whole world is caught up in the entanglement. So who is going to cut that? That's the beginning verses of the Vishuddhimagga. And the Buddha gives the example of not understanding the particular, like getting caught up in the tangled skein or a matted ball of thread. You see, we all have experienced this, that when the threads are matted, it's very difficult to entangle the thread and make it straight. Unable to overpass and the way of so because of not understanding this why this happens, we suffer. So it's very deep. I have said that craving is the cause of grasping. Okay, so tanna pachya bhava. So what happens? The Buddha has from the 12 nidanas, there is there is a contact with the world through our sensory organs. And based on that contact, phassa pachaya tanna. the craving emerges within us, and the craving leads to grasping. So grasping is called bhava, okay, or in the grasping is also called the upadan. All these words, terminologies, when we begin to entangle, we begin to see that some of them carry the similar sort of meaning, and that's why it's very important to know some kind of a terminologies. So craving is the cause of grasping. Where there is no craving of any sort or kind, whatever by anyone for anything, would there be any arising of grasping? So grasping, holding on to something. If there is no craving, if there is no tanna, if there is no trishna, if there is no acquisitive instinct of any sort or kind, whatever by anyone for anything, would there be any arising of grasping? There would not, Lord. Craving gives rise to pursuit of gain. Now, the shift in the way the Paticca Samutpada is explained here. So, pursuit of gain craving gives rise to pursuit of gain. So, whenever we have arising of this tanna, we want to gain. We set ourselves for the pursuit of gain. And the pursuit of gain gives rise to desire and passion. Isn't it? Desire and passion. And when we have this arising of the desire and passion, we can almost say blind desire and blind passion because there is no awareness. Then what happens? The desire and passion give rise to tenacity. Tenacity gives rise to possession. So when we hold something tenaciously, we try to possess it. And when we try to possess it, gives rise to avarice and more possession. So the more we try to hold on to something, the more we become possessive of it. And then if we possess something, leads to keeping watch and ward over possessions, then we have to bring in, our watch and warding over the possessions. So it's also true about our different visions or different views, the way we tenaciously hold on to certain views, because they, in a way, strengthen our sense of our understanding of our own identity. So we tenaciously hold on to the caste, class, our possessions, our house, our relations. We tenaciously hold on to them. And when we tenaciously hold on to them, we become more possessive. When we become more possessive, as the Paticca Samutpada is explained here, what happens? Possession gives rise to avarice and more possession, and possession leads to keeping watch and ward over possessions. Now, the verse number 12 leads to verse number 13 in a very beautiful way. Many a bad and wicked state of things arise from keeping watch and ward over possession. So when we are trying to guard something in a neurotic way and ward off any danger to safeguard it, such as blows and wounds, strife, quarreling, slander, and lies. So what arises when we are trying to watch and ward over possessions? Blows and wounds. So, it leads to conflict in the world. It leads to the violence, blows and wounds. It leads to the conflict, strife. It leads to quarreling. It leads to slander and lies. We speak against each other. We tell lies and we badmouth. And this is the chain of causation. Ananda. This is what the Paticca Samutpada is. This is how beautifully explained by the Buddha that when we hold on to something very tenaciously, grasping it like acquisitive instinct, not letting hold of it, not letting it go, to possess it, to watch it and ward off any dangers to it. Then if we have this kind of an acquisitive instinct, what happens? It leads to the violence, it leads to the conflict, it leads to quarreling, it leads to slander and lies. So this is the Paticca Samutpada. This is very deep, as you can see. If there was no craving, would there arise pursuit of gain? The Buddha questions. So the Buddha is also teaching as to how we should create a harmony in the world, how we create a harmony in the society. So the Buddha says this is the chain of causation, Ananda. If there was no craving, would there arise pursuit of gain? If there was no pursuit of gain, would there arise passion? If there was no passion, would there arise tenacity? If there would be no tenacity, would there arise the love for private possessions? And the possessions are now qualified here in terms of the private possession. See, Baba Ambedkar has thought about the words very carefully. When in the Sangha or in the community, we hold the things in together, common together. We don't try to possess it privately, isn't it? In other words, we don't have the exclusive claim of belonging to me only. If it's a social possession, it's okay. If there would be no possession, would there arise avarice for more possession? There would not, Lord. If there would not be the love of private possession, now the word possession is qualified by private, would there not be peace? There would be, Lord. I recognize the earth as earth. You see, this is a Mool Pariyaya Sutta. This now the Buddha is switching to a very different, teaching is very, very, very important teaching to understand. So then how does the Buddha look at the world? I recognize the earth as earth, but I have no craving for it, said the Lord. So we witness as it is, but we don't run after it. We don't have this acquisitive instinct for it. We know that this is earth, this is water, these are all different elements. This is my body. This is, these are all, this is a house that I live in. But when we do that, we acknowledge that, we recognize that, but we do not run after it. We do not crave for it. Therefore, it is, say I, that by extirpating all cravings, by not lusting after them, but by destroying and abandoning and renouncing them, all that I acquired enlightenment. So how does the Buddha acquire the enlightenment? What was it? How the Buddha acquired the enlightenment? In other words, how did the Buddha attain to the Buddhahood or enlightenment? And the Buddha is giving a very simple but very deep teaching, which is not easy to understand. Therefore, so Buddha is just a witness, he doesn't add to it, he's witnessing, he's seeing the way it is. Therefore, it is, say I, that by extirpating all cravings, by not lusting after them, but by destroying and abandoning and renouncing them, all that I acquired enlightenment. Seek to be partakers, brethren, not of the world's goods. So don't try to, be the possessor of goods, but of my doctrines. For craving brings about attachment, and attachment enslaves the mind. So the Buddha is saying that my Dhamma can free you from this acquisitive instinct. If we practice, if we do not let our mind be possessive or driven by the acquisitive instincts, we can be immediately free. And the Buddha says that for craving brings about attachment, and attachment enslaves the mind. It doesn't let us be free to be what it is. And the mind is like this, that it's trying to seek freedom all the time. Otherwise, we won't be studying Buddha Dhamma, isn't it? The mind has this quality, though it's acquisitive nature, possesses and engages with the world. But the mind, the basic quality of the mind is to free itself. And that's what is the greatest teaching of the Buddha to us, that our mind can free us if it's turned in the direction of freedom. It can free us. So the detached mind is a free mind, and Buddha is saying, for craving brings about attachment, and attachment enslaves the mind. In these words did the blessed Lord explain to Ananda and the brethren the evils of the acquisitive instinct. So you see these two subparts. Looks like we are now coming to the end of the book, and this is the last part of the last book 8 of the Buddha and his Dhamma. But you see the depth of the teaching that we are entering in terms of understanding the very nature of our mind, in terms of the acquisitive instinct, in terms of being possessive, in terms of having that craving, in terms of having that tenacity to be attached to the possessions, to the views, and to the various philosophies that we hold dear to. And the Buddha is saying that, don't be attached. Your mind should be free. And we know that when our minds are detached, we can reach to the freedom of mind. And that's why, this teaching of the Paticca as formulated here, presented here in one of the Buddhist sutras. There are other ways by which the Buddha has explained how the Paticca works in the world. And the verse number 18, I'm going to reinforce our understanding in terms of I recognize the earth as earth. So Buddha is not denying whatever we are experiencing through our sensory consciousness. He's saying that I don't run after it. I experience it, I witness it, I recognize it, but I don't run after it. I don't try to possess it. I just want to witness. I just witness it. So this is it for the class today, and we will have the the next class. We will finish the book number 8, and then we have a few remaining classes, which are very interesting. As I told you that they go very deeper and deeper and deeper. So I stop here and then open up the class for any comments or any discussion that anyone would like to have. So anyone has anything to say?
Jai Bhim, sir. Sir, in the 8th verse of the book 1, part 3.
Okay.
The blessed Lord did not comfort the poor by praising their poverty. And nor did he sublimate poverty as a happy state of man to live in. Basically, what I have got from this is it's not from your the previous births that in society such myths are going on, no? And lot of people have been grabbed by all these facts that if you are poor means it's due to some reason that is associated with you only. And Buddha has given light to it. It is not praisable. The poverty. Please throw light on these concepts, please.
No, you're right. It has nothing to do with your karma that you are born poor or rich or whatever, because nobody can grasp the concept of karma like this. And poverty, as we know now, as the economy is teaching, is, man-made, isn't it? And the poverty can be eradicated, and it has been done in many countries. The people have been living the life of abject poverty, and poverty is not something that is your karma. It's a problem of structure, isn't it? So there in the Buddhist Jatakas, there are many stories of people who were born when poor, and through their efforts they could live in a way that has enriched their lives and made them very rich. And the efforts, if they put rightful efforts, the coming out of the poverty is not something that can be that's perpetual. So I don't think poverty or being poor has anything to do with your past life or past karma. It's very dubious concept. It's very difficult concept to understand. And then why some people born poor have become rich? There's some people who are born rich have become pitch poor, and so on and so forth. So you see,
can we connect it with the verse number 12 of book 2, possessions?
Yes.
Means possessions give rise to 11 and 12 verses.
Yes, but here we are talking about the psychological way by which we get fanatically attached to something. isn't it? The Buddha is saying that poverty cannot be ennobled. There is no merit in poverty. And the Buddha is saying that, if we want to have your freedom of mind, we cannot have this instinctual, possessiveness, right? So
Yes, sir. Yes.
it is not just for rich or poor. Even sometimes a poor man can be, acquisitive, he can have instinct which is acquisitive in nature. We all have acquisitive instincts, right? So it doesn't matter whether you are rich or poor. What matters is your training of the mind to not be overpowered by attaching tenacious to something, right?
Yes, sir. But the means we can means it's in my view only.
Please,
It
please.
means if a poor person is
Hmm.
not having anything any wealth,
Hmm.
means he is on the stage where he can very easily attain the state where possession giving rise to the possession can be given up. And as blessed the Lord has been mentioned in verse number 20, the about attachment and attachment enslaves the mind.
Yeah. You see, there are various kinds of dukkha, and if it was such a case, then all the poor people would have been very close to the truth, right? Very close to the
Sir.
enlightenment, and such is not the case. But we know for sure that the life of difficulties has something in it that that can enable us to think seriously about life, like the deaths around us of our near and dear ones, for example, or the social discrimination, as in the case of Raidas and Kabir. They have risen to the level where uncommon level. They were enlightened, and sometimes the riches, like in the story of Yasha that we have seen, disgusted by the material sort of the world around him. They were so disgusted, and seeing the filth of the body in the case of Yasha. And you see, there can be many ways by which one can be attached, one can be enlightened. The point here is this, that the first subsection is about, you cannot be poor and have a easy life. So the poverty, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, it's very important. For example, the Buddhist bhikshus go for the poverty, but it's a chosen one. They have chosen this life of not indulging into the worldly responsibilities of family, anything, worldly responsibility towards their kith and kin, or any responsibility towards even the king. They don't pay taxes. So you see, it depends on. So if you are living in a family and you have kids, and you are living a poor man's life, nothing to eat, no shelter over your head, and you are then ennobling poverty, that there is a more merit in poverty, the Buddha will say that you are stupid, right? So it depends on how we are looking at the poverty, but the material poverty in a society leads to a lot of suffering. Just to give you an illustration, if you look at the poor countries, how much they suffer when there are anything that challenges the basic human security of life, right?
Yes, sir. Through comparison, we find ourselves in trouble. We are in comparison we find ourselves in lacking of something.
Hmm.
If we are in a stage where everything means if we take it towards the nature, means it is available for all and equally available for all, and scarcity of something leads to the pain in the life.
I think this is very beautifully explained by Kabir Das. Sai itna dijiye,
जा में कुटुम संभाए,
हमें कुटुंब समाए, मैं भी भूखा ना रहूं.
साधु भी भूखा ना जाए.
Bas, that's it. It's very much captured here, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very true. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
So, is Buddha's dislike for poverty denies the karma theory of Brahmins.
Hmm.
According to them, that the karma done in this life People are born in the lower caste, and they cannot rise from their the status because it is because of the previous karma they did. So here poverty is to be abandoned, and it is not. It denies this theory of Brahmins.
Yes. I think the greatest empowerment that the Buddha has given to all is this, that the centrality of the mind, and we all have mind, and we can work out our own salvation if we are ready to make efforts. So, what can be more empowering than that, isn't it? Whether you are rich, poor, whoever you are, you got the mind, you got the ultimate, source within you, isn't it? And when the latter Buddhists have said that the Buddha lies in your own, being, in your own mind, you just have, if you have the guts to awaken, isn't it? So that is the greatest empowerment that the Buddha said, that your salvation lies in your own hand, your freedom lies in your own hand, your freedom lies in your own mind. If you can turn it upside down, isn't it? The way it is, possessing all the time. If you can turn the very mind upside down, instead of being possessive, just detached. Easy to say, very difficult to do. But the principle is very clear, that if we can turn our mind's instinct upside down, instead of possessing, instead of hating, if we can love, if we can get detached, isn't it? If we can train our mind accordingly, it's the freedom is ours, each of us, irrespective of wherever we are born, which community we are born. It doesn't matter whether rich or poor. So I think that's a very good point, that there is Buddha's Dhamma challenges all these things. It ultimately restores the responsibility to each one of us to work out our own freedom, to work out our own salvation, to work out our own, enlightenment. So Brahmin, they are not there, whatever philosophies they are not there, we don't care. We know that we have a mind which can be turned upside down.
Yeah. So Buddha doesn't like poverty. He doesn't favor poverty, and simultaneously he doesn't favor accumulation of property.
Yeah.
He says to control the passions, greed, and choose the madhyam marg.
Yes. Very well put, Algana. So here we end our class today, and see you next week to study the last part of the last book 8 of the Buddha Dhamma. So Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.
Jai Bhim.